This is the, okay. You can hear me okay? Well, good morning to all. Good afternoon, good evening to those online. It's an absolute pleasure to be here in Vancouver. And I thank the organizing committees for all they've done in preparation for this meeting, and really looking forward to the week here. As Eric just said, it was back in June 2019, we had this unusual meeting in Reykjavik, where we were looking at what the future of global radio astronomy might look like in the main, recognizing, of course, there are many other projects out there. And Eric, I must correct you. You said that it was one of the action items. I think the organization of this meeting was the only action item that came from that meeting, with a suggestion that at some point in the future we might get together again and talk about what the future of radio astronomy might look like. But what I'm here to talk to you this morning about is the current status of the SKA observatory. So I'm going to start with a short movie, which is part of our public outreach activity, but it sort of sets the scene. I'll stop talking for about 50 seconds. I just want to emphasize, you saw that last point and you see on the screen there, the recognition of the indigenous people and the cultures that have traditionally lived on the lands in which our facilities are located. And Luke talked about how important that is at the moment. So we're very conscious of that. We intend to be on these sites in Western Australia and South Africa for many decades. And we also intend to be good neighbors to the local and indigenous people on both sides. So, start by just talking a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum. You all know what this is, of course. But I just want to put in context what 21st century astronomy looks like. So we have fantastic ground-based facilities to observe gamma rays under construction, the Cherenkov telescope array. There are major plans in the X-ray domain for major missions in the near future. Similarly for the ultraviolet. Of course, in the optical, there's 3 huge optical telescopes in the planning. James Webb Space Telescope has been launched. And in the millimeter, submillimeter, ALMA is operational and has been for 10 years. And then in the radio, there are 2 cornerstone projects. Square kilometer array, which is under construction, and of course the next generation VLA, which you'll hear about a lot today. Now, I don't have the time to go into all of the details about some of the science, some of the aspects of the things that we're doing. Other speakers this week will touch upon many of this. So my aim is to give you a high-level overview. But I think you see with those facilities that will be available in the 21st century, what a magnificent capability we astronomers will have to explore the universe. And I sincerely wish, as I'm sure some of my older colleagues here in the room do, that I was 30, 40 years younger, just being able to start out on this journey again. So who are we, the SKA Observatory? We're an intergovernmental organization governed by a treaty. We're just over 2 years old. We were born in early 2021, and we're only the second intergovernmental organization in astronomy after ESO, the European Southern Observatory. We have, at least in the next couple of weeks, we will have 9 full member countries. Spain, the Spanish Council of Ministers have approved their membership of the SKA Observatory, and they have lodged their accession documents with the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in the UK, which is the process that has to be followed, because the UK is hosts the headquarters of the SKA Observatory. So we're now a 9-member organization. As Luke just indicated, Canada and then our colleagues in France and Germany are in the accession stage. I sincerely hope, will be full members well before the end of this calendar year. India and Sweden, their governments are yet to take the final decision, but it sits at the highest level in government. And so I hope that too will come to a conclusion this year. And at somewhat earlier stage, Japan and South Korea are considering how they might participate in the observatory. And you can see our mission statement there. You all know where those countries are on the map, but the reason I show this map is to show the unique geographic spread of the SKA Observatory. We're as much north-south as we are east-west. It's partly driven by where we've chosen to locate the telescopes, but also pulling together that collaboration has been essential to drive the SKA Observatory. And I believe we are unique in intergovernmental organizations participating in research activities. So it's a very unusual structure that we have. Brings with it, of course, enormous challenges, but it's also very productive. So what are we building? We're building one observatory, and I have to emphasize that. It's a single integrated observatory. And there you can see a view of our headquarters at Jodrell Bank in the UK. And we're building 2 telescopes covering a wide frequency range on 2 continents. So we're spread across 3 sites, but we actually have members on 5 continents of the planet. So what we're building in Australia is SKA Low. And you see photographs here. Well, top right is a photograph of the SKA Low antennas covering the frequency range 50 to 350 megahertz. And then below that is an artist impression of what the core of SKA Low will look like. Each of these stations will have 256 of these 2-meter tall antennas, and there'll be 512 of them spread with maximum baseline length of 74 kilometers. So arranged with a core and 3 spiral arms, as you see in the map there. And we have a similar configuration in South Africa for SK Mid, although this time spread across 150 kilometers. We will ultimately have 197 fully steerable dishes, which will include the existing Meerkat dishes. They will be fully integrated into the SKA. Frequency range going up to 15.4 gigahertz initially, and we hope to extend that to the mid-20s with a future development. So just the SK project in numbers, you see the cost there on the left. Total cost for the first 10 years of, it's actually just over 2 billion as we escalate the numbers with inflation. Key number I want you to look at is the total volume of data in the top right. Once fully operational, we'll be generating over 700 petabytes of data per year. And so the processing, the software to handle this data, the processing power required, and the processing techniques are all going to be very different for the SKA. So some of the science challenges that we face, many of them are very similar to NGVLA, but of course with the frequency range at which we sit, there will be some differences. We have these science working groups covering these, this wide range of science, enormously wide range of science topics. And from these, there are about, I think it's 14 high priority science objectives have been identified. Of course, there are many more as well. And what this drove us to, these science objectives govern the specifications of the observatory, of the telescopes. But what it drove us to is to make sure that we build a facility, not an experiment. We need to be able to respond to changing science, discoveries of unknown phenomena that will occur over the decades of operation of the observatory. So I commend all of the people in these science working groups who've been working so hard, and there's over 1,000. I think the latest number is about 1,200 people active within these science working groups. So, of course, one of the big themes that the SKA will tackle is the evolution of the universe. And a major aspect of this is the study of hydrogen, from the earliest moments that neutral hydrogen was visible in the early stages of the universe until now. And I like this diagram because what it demonstrates is that primarily, but not entirely, the era of first stars, first supernovae, black holes, protogalaxy mergers, that's the realm in which SKA low will operate, especially in studying hydrogen. Closer to our own epoch is where SKA mid will spend the majority of its time undertaking the studies and the various high priority science goals. So that just gives you a sense of one aspect of what we'll be doing with the SKA Observatory. Now, a couple of little animations here. So this is an area, of course, where we'll have considerable overlap with the NGVLA and ALMA. You know, studying the formation of planets, protoplanetary systems. We will be more sensitive to the slightly larger particles. Of course, with the wavelength dependence of the emission, we need to be highly sensitive. We'll also be exploring galaxy evolution. Again, very complementary topic with the NGVLA. How do galaxies form? We'll be asking questions like, what is dark matter? How does it influence the structure of the universe? And then pulsars. Pulsars is one of our key science goals. Trying to understand gravitational waves, how they emerge from the supermassive black hole mergers. Was Einstein right about gravity? Well, so I wondered if that was me, but it's no, it was Dr. Beasley, I believe. Yeah, I'm talking about interference in a minute, Tony. Put me off my stride now. So delivering the observatory. I have to say that, first of all, we're creating a new observatory from scratch. We had no people, no buildings, no assets, nothing when we started on this journey some 10 years ago. Of course, we had a small not-for-profit organization to start with, but now we're a treaty organization. That took quite a few years to bring into reality, and we're building up. We have a total of about 230 employees now across 3 continents, and of course, we've started construction. So Council approved the start of construction activities soon after the birth of the observatory. In December of last year, we had our construction commencement ceremonies, and as of the end of last week, 53 construction contracts have been awarded, totaling approximately 500 million euros. So we're really proceeding hard on the construction activities. The construction strategy we're adopting is summarized in this slide here. Now, our target is what we call the baseline design, and I gave you the numbers for that a few minutes ago. But we had not gathered all of the funding at the time that Council gave us the permission to proceed. If we'd waited until we had all of the funding, we'd still be sitting here now without having started the project. So we took full advantage of the nature of interferometers. We're building all of the infrastructure and then deploying as many of the dishes and the antennas as we have the funding available. My job, meanwhile, is to fill in that funding gap, which we're pursuing aggressively, so we can build out the full baseline array. So you see these milestone events, array assemblies, we call them. Our immediate goal is these small prototype, well, they're more than prototype systems, array assembly 0.5, towards the end of 2024. Key thing about these is they will be using all of the SKA hardware and software. A couple of minor exceptions, but essentially they are mini SKA systems. And our goal from then is to maintain a continuously working and expanding facility that demonstrates the full performance capabilities of the SKA, building out to Array Assembly 4, which is the full baseline design. Our first data release to the community we expect in 2026-27. This won't be early science. This will be data for Science Commission and verification, but it will be something that allows the community to see what SKA data looks like. The receivers we're building are summarized here. The ones in bold are those we're building in the first stage of our program. Bands 3 and 4 will come a bit later with more money. You can see there the band 5, the higher frequency feeds at a lab in Oxford. Here is band 2 at a lab in South Africa. And band 1 actually in the field in South Africa with its construction team standing around it. So these are all real prototype systems. The anticipated sensitivity, you've seen these diagrams around for some time. The one on the left shows the anticipated sensitivity of SKA compared to the current state of the art, LOFAR, upgraded GMRT, and the Jansky VLA. We put the NG VLA in there with its estimated numbers. Bottom left is the survey speed. And over on the right is our long-term aspiration, the full SKA, something 10 times larger than we're planning now. That's a few years away, I think. But this next diagram is very interesting. It shows the evolution of performance, a planned evolution of performance of the SKA compared to the current state of the art. So let me just talk you through the top diagram. So first of all, you see time running across the top. You see those vertical dotted lines, AA 0.5, AA1, AA2, with the number of dishes. The horizontal dotted lines are the sensitivity in the different bands of the current state of the art, Meerkat, Jansky VLA, upgraded GMRT. And the bold colored lines are the 3 different bands for SKA, mid. And you will see towards the end of 2025, we become the most sensitive radio telescope at these frequencies on the planet. And you see a similar number for SKA low on the bottom. I think this is a very nice example of the evolution of performance. And you can see where AA star is on those two. Remind you that our goal is AA4 for the first phase of the project. Luke mentioned SKA regional data centers. So one of the reasons that we are following this model for processing the data, summarized in this diagram. You see the enormous data rates being generated by both SKA low and SKA mid. One innovation is that our correlators, our beamformers and correlators, will not be at the sites. They will be several hundred kilometers away on the end of fiber connections, one in Perth and one in Cape Town. Sitting adjacent to them will be supercomputers. And these supercomputers are an integral part of the radio telescopes. They will not be accessible to the general user. If the supercomputer, if either one crashes for whatever reason, we stop observing because we can't process the data anymore. We'll be doing real-time processing of the data all the way through to the data products. And you can see in the middle there, the little diagram of a person with an arrow through it. That's to illustrate there will be no user interaction with the system at this point. What will happen is the data products are sent over undersea fiber cable to a set of regional centers around the globe. And there, that is how the astronomers will access SKA data, through those regional centers. Michiel van Haarlem will be talking about this SRC network a little later in the week. Telescope access, it will be science-driven, but the nature of the SKA observatory tells us that this will be based on contribution level as well. We have that to fold into the nature of telescope access. So it will not, and I say this with a heavy heart, it will not be an open science facility. And I think that reflects the scale of what is being built here, which dwarfs the scale of previous infrastructures. Countries are putting a lot of money into this, and they need to ensure that their scientific communities get their access. So we are planning key science projects, maybe somewhere between 50 and 70% of the first few years on that. Smaller programs, PI-led, somewhere between 30 and 50. There, of course, will be discretionary time. There will be international time available to the broad community, everybody on the planet, but it will be a small fraction, and we have yet to determine with the Council what that fraction might be. What you see here is just broadly what the dates at which we expect to start the key science programs. Basically, the start of science verification in 2026, as I've said, with the key science program, the planning and the start of key science programs, the planning process starting also in that same year, but actually the start of observing of key science programs probably in 2029. So I just want to show you a few photographs of actual construction to demonstrate that we're doing things. So this was the Wajiri Yamaji dancers celebrating the start of construction in Western Australia. Slightly elderly dancers there. They were great fun though. It was a very enjoyable day. And a much younger troupe of dancers in the Karoo celebrating the start of construction for SKA Mid. Various other photographs. Not Ant Shinkle, sorry. It's Joe McMullen, who many of you may recognize is leading the construction efforts for SKA. We had a great day. This is the SKA Mid design dish. This one actually funded by the Max Planck Society. It's the first dish, SKA dish, on the Karoo in South Africa. Various other evidence of activity, dish foundations, SKA low verification system, software people. Foundation for SKA Mid. And this is Ant Shinkle and Sarah Pierce, who are the two senior SKA people in country in Australia, with our very nicely branded vehicle there. So in South Africa, we now have 36 staff and a very nice interim science operations center to put them in. We also have an interim engineering operations center out near the SKA Mid telescopes, and we're recruiting rapidly. You may see a lot of advertisements for SKA jobs in both South Africa and Australia, and I encourage you to apply for them. There'll be science operations jobs being advertised in the relatively near future. And similarly, in Australia, we have 41 staff at the end of April with our Interim Science Operations Centre in Perth and the Engineering Operations Centre in Geraldton. Just want to spend a moment on a challenge for our subject, protection of the dark and quiet skies. This is a gorgeous photograph from a gentleman called Trevor Dobson. This is the Pinnacles National Park in Western Australia. And this is why we do astronomy, isn't it? For things like this. If you take that same camera and put a 2-hour exposure on it, Elon Musk shows up. This is what the sky looks like. And the vast majority of these are Starlink satellites. And each one of those is a moving radio source, transmitting downwards at about 12.5 gigahertz. Now, it provides wonderful internet service, but in the remote regions where our radio telescopes exist, it can cause significant damage to our science. So, NRAO, NSF are working in the US on this. We are working with the satellite companies. We're also working hard on the policy aspect. We're a member of the International Telecommunications Union, and we're a permanent observer on the UN Committee for the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. And you may well be aware that we got together with Noir Lab to form the Center for the Protection of Dark and Quiet Skies. So this is an existential threat, I think, to astronomy. I won't talk about this wider impact case study. You'll hear more about it later today. But science diplomacy is one of the aspects why governments are interested in the SKA. So, my summary. Construction activities are proceeding at pace. Residual design issues are being dealt with very professionally. It's no doubt our level of risk has increased due to the current global situation, but we're managing it. We're on site in the host countries, construction has started, and finally, I can see SKA science on the horizon. But I also want to end with these words, that the NGVLA and the SKA will provide this a joint global capability in the radio, with the ability to observe the entire sky. And I think we'll be able to deliver a range of science greater than at any other waveband. Now, we already collaborate in numerous ways, and with these two facilities, we'll continue to do so. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Phil. We do have time for some questions if anybody has a question for Phil. Yeah, JJ. Wait for the mic, because otherwise the people online can't hear you.
Hello? Hello?
Thanks, Phil, for that great introduction. The slide where you were talking about the need for protected data for the return on investment, essentially, but at some point there is a public release of SKA data, or
no? That's correct. At some point after a proprietary period, and the length of that proprietary period has not yet been agreed with Council, the data will be made available publicly across the globe. Absolutely right.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. I'm just wondering, two questions very briefly. Is there any plan to update the United Nations Treaty on Outer Space that would include some of these questions about what's happening to our sky now? And also, is there any plan in the US to join the SKA? Thank you.
So the second question I'll leave to my colleague following when he gives his talk. But the first question about the outer space treaties, our experience, and we knew this actually, we've known it for a long time. The policy space within the United Nations, especially where it relates to outer space matters, moves at absolute glacial speed. So we hope, one of the reasons for us being in there is that we are hoping to drive change, but it will take decades before we see any policy changes. Meanwhile, these launches are continuing at hundreds, if not thousands of satellites a year. It's like the Wild West at the moment. The level of regulatory oversight of what's happening, there is some, but it's not enough. It really needs to be more. So yeah, it's a long-term game that we have to play there.
Okay, Tom, and I think that's the last question.
Yeah, so I had a question about the open skies issue as well. You mentioned the rationale for this was that SKA is going to be at a scale bigger than anything that's been done before, but that's not really true, right? There are NASA-grade observatories that were more expensive than SKA and that have had open skies policies. So how do you justify that?
Well, so I'm talking about ground-based. Yeah, space-based facilities. Yeah, it's a different game. We know the cost is higher. There's launch cost, development costs, and of course, many of them are done in a collaborative fashion. But the fact is, this is the largest investment in ground-based radio astronomy, at least, made by the member nations, and they need to ensure that their scientific communities have the initial access to the data. So that's the rationale that drives it.
So we're a bit ahead of schedule, so Phil's just negotiated for one more question. So. Yeah, okay, Toby? Yeah, microphone's coming. Over this way? Oh, sorry, okay. Toby, do you mind?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nice stuff, Phil. I just had a quick question about AA star. How robust is that? You've kind of alluded to it here with the inflationary environment. Does that factor in, like, for example, what's been going on recently with inflation, obviously, and how much of the members' contribution are indexed? Like, of what % is indexed to inflation?
Well, yeah, you know more than you're giving on, don't you? So the majority of members agreed to index their contributions, but of course they did so in an era where inflation was 2%. So 10% is a shock to them. We pretty much through the discussions on that now, and we have what we call an indexation gap, but it's not huge, and it mainly relates to the 1 or 2 countries that are unable, for various reasons, to index their contributions. They hope to make additional contributions, but not for legal reasons within their own countries. They can't index their current contributions. Very complicated subject. Could talk about it offline. But yeah, I mean, money's at the heart of everything we do. We're continually chasing more money. And yes, there has been an immediate impact. Inflationary pressures in Western Australia are driving hard on what we're building there, but we're solving it, and I'm very confident that the AA star is achievable.
Okay. And Toby, last question. Up here, Adam.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for this. It's a very similar question. So just what's the status of the funding gap at the moment?
So the funding gap between AA star and AA4? We have enough for AA star. There's a small gap there related to inflationary pressures, but we're solving that. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Phil. Let's thank Phil again.